so tonight we're going to talk about top keto myths busted. I'm going to take the top keto myths that are out there in the internet world, in your doctor's offices, in your groups of people who are just talking about different diet plans, and what they hear about keto, what is actually true and what is actually misinformation. And that's especially about the things that keto will help and the things that it won't help or will help, or and that kind of back and forth. So I just want to say up front, this is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition that you may have, because we're going to be talking about some medical conditions, so I have to put that out there. So why am I doing this talk? Well, because for several months and even years now, people come to me wanting to start the ketogenic diet, but they're scared of, oh, it's going to cause this or it's going to cause that. And I'm trying to dispel those common myths or those common misinformation nuggets that come to us through the internet. And but I also want to give you the real answer, and then a place where you can go and research it yourself, because in the end, I don't want you to believe me either. I want you to go out and be able to find your own research and to say, how did Kim find this information, and where can I find more information about that certain thing? I'm going to point you in a direction. I'm going to give you some nuggets, but I want you to be able to go out and research it for yourself, so that you're not believing Kim either, so that you can go and say, I know more. So that's what this is about. Okay, so a lot of critics in the media, and I have another thing that happened to me too. My whole background for my PowerPoints decided to die, and I had to kind of try to recreate it on the fly. So I'm sorry, it doesn't look like all the others. It looks sort of like the others, but it's the PowerPoint stopped accepting my slides the way they used to be, so I had to recreate. So anyway, the media is our worst enemy for so many reasons, but they'll say things like the ketogenic diet is a fad, or it's a trend, or even things even more horrible like keto is dangerous. They'll put that out there with absolutely no proof whatsoever. Well, what does that mean? What do you mean keto is dangerous? And a lot of times they'll say it comes with some serious risks. And then they won't tell you what those risks are or what they think they are. And then they have no proof to back it up anyway, which drives me absolutely crazy. They'll put this sensational headline out there, and then they'll put junk behind it. So a lot of this information does come from an article and a book by Nina Teicholz, and she's the author of The Big Fat Surprise, which, if you haven't read that book, it's a great book to let you know how we got to the dietary restrictions and things the FDA tells us are good to eat for 60 years ago, and the lie that it's based on. So if you don't read another book, that one will show you how our current recommendations from the USDA are basically trash. Right now we're in the 2020. They have they're going through a new looking at the dietary guidelines once again. And they have a bunch of vegans on the panel and a bunch of people who are paid by big food. And so ketogenic and low carb lifestyles are not being looked at as viable options for dietary guidelines for certain people. And there's a group called Low Carb USA and a few other groups out there that are working on the political side of it, trying to get low carb diets recognized, especially for those with diabetes and epilepsy and heart disease and some other chronic conditions that can be helped by a low carb diet. And the biggest thing I can tell you about that is that when I told you those people on those panels they're paid by big food, they are. And most of these studies, if they do quote a study at all in these articles, and most of the time they don't, you have to follow the money. Who paid for the study? What's in their best interest to put this study out there? Why, where's the money? That's what I say, follow the money. All right, nope, I'm not working the same way anymore. I'm not on the thing. All right, so how do I find studies? PubMed is a federal national website. It's the federal government, your tax dollars pay for it. It is a housing of all of the clinical studies that are out there to date. It's like a database of clinical studies. Some of them are epidemiological, and some of them are random controlled clinical studies, which we're going to talk about the difference and what those are in just a minute. But basically, you can use it like a browser to look up any medical study that's been done on anything. It can get really technical, but if you find someone who's referenced a study, you can look through it to make sure the study says what it says it says. And because a lot of times what's in the abstract, which is kind of telling you what the story is about, a lot of times they'll put in that study, they'll put what they want you to believe, but the results in the study itself don't actually show that. And I'll show you in one of these, I think, that how that happens. But they can put anything in the abstract they want to. They can put any conjecture that they feel like putting in there, even if the results in the data don't match it. So you have to read the whole study. So, and also if you get into it and it's in the weeds and you like, I don't understand these words, I don't understand what they're talking about, you can always send me the study that you're interested in. I live, breathe, and eat this stuff, okay? I have lived it for 3 years. I know what to look for, and I can break it down for you and tell you what it means in regular English. But I urge you to look it up yourself and get educated with it. I mean, that's what PubMed is there for. You know, this is what doctors use it. I mean, everybody in the medical field will use PubMed to look at research studies and find out what's going on. Okay, so well-designed studies. Let's talk about a well-designed study, because not all medical studies are created equal. The best kind of study is a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial. This is the gold standard of medical testing. They're very expensive to conduct. What are they? What is this thing? Okay, so what it means is the researchers, the people giving the test, they don't know who's getting the placebo and who's getting the treatment, okay? It's randomized. It means that they don't pick anybody. They just get people from all over the place. They don't pick the people either. Then they don't know who gets the placebo and who gets the treatment. So it's completely blind. The participant doesn't know, and the researcher doesn't know. So it's completely blind so that you get the best results possible. Then they're also very expensive to conduct, especially in nutrition studies, because if you do this, then let's say it's nutrition, so you have to feed everybody exactly the same thing with exactly the same calories for exactly the same amount of time, and that gets expensive, right? So that's why they're not often done, is because they cost a lot of money. As opposed to epidemiological studies. Well, what are those? There's just huge groups of people. It can be thousands. It can even be millions of people, but usually it can be in the thousands of people. These are not usually done on humans. They're usually done on mice or rats. And even though they are mice and rats are mammals, they are not humans. So just because in mice it does this doesn't necessarily mean it's going to do that in the human body. So in these epidemiological studies for nutrition studies, they largely rely on patient reporting, which is not accurate. For example, they'll ask them, how many times have you had milk in the past year? Well, who remembers that? And how much milk do you know? Do you drink 8 ounces of milk at a time, or is it 12 ounces? How much? So you have to estimate how much milk you've had in a year. And they'll go through your whole thing that way, and they base their whole study on a patient reporting what they've eaten. Now, if you're not on a ketogenic program that I put you on, then 9 times out of 10, you're not tracking a darn thing that you're eating. So therefore, you have no idea what you ate yesterday, never mind what you ate a year ago. So this is why these epidemiological studies, which a lot of our nutrition-based USDA guidelines are based on, you can tell that that's not a good model. It's not a good plan. Also, epidemiological studies, just because of their nature of being large, usually not done on a human, and usually relying on patient reporting, they can show association, but not causation. And what does that mean? Association means, let's say, for example, if they say if you eat saturated fat, there's an association with that to LDL cholesterol. It's an association. It doesn't mean that LDL causes heart disease. It's not a causation, or that the saturated fat causes the high LDL. It just means that it's a possible association. It just means in patients that have reported this way, this is what happened with their blood work. But that doesn't mean anything because you can't prove causation with that. You can only prove causation in a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical study. Okay? And again, you have to follow the money. Follow the money. Who's paying for the study? Who would benefit from the outcome? There's a lot of studies out there, especially in big food, that are paid for, like, you know, things that there was one study about sugar not harming you, and it was paid for by Coca-Cola. Duh. Well, of course they want an outcome that says sugar doesn't harm you if they're Coca-Cola. So you have to follow the money. Make sure I got all that stuff in there. I think it is. So when I say about well-designed studies, that's what I'm talking about. And not all the studies that I'm going to show you are that kind, because they're just not out there. To find randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled things for everyone of these things that we're talking about is kind of impossible. There are more and more of them happening, but I'm going to show you what the research has currently said. So let's get to these myths. Myth number 1, keto can be dangerous for diabetes. I have never in my life heard such a lie. So we're going to go to this next slide, okay? Here's the article, and I've already got it up on there. So, okay, so this article, right here, ketogenic diets may lead to an increased risk of type 2 diabetes. Study in mice says. Oh, okay, first of all, it says, study in mice says, may lead to an increased risk. So it's not even telling you a may lead. So let's go back to this. So just to show you that this article is real. I didn't just make it up. Okay, so this article claims that the ketogenic causes insulin resistance. It was done on mice, and mice do not have the same metabolism as human. And this article doesn't even have a real author behind its name. They just put out by the Physiological Society. It's a group of European scientists. And if you get the results of the actual study that they cited, this is what it says. Short-term obesogenic caused an increase in fasting insulin, but not ketogenic diet. I can't remember what that means. HB, what does that mean? Anyway, not KD, which is ketogenic diet, causes an increase in fasting insulin and homeostatic model assessment insulin resistance. So what it's saying is this high refeed, that's what it was, this high refeed, meaning you eat a lot of snacks, causes a higher fasting insulin than just the ketogenic diet by itself. In short, this means that if your results were a high carb, high fat diet, that's what it was, high fat, high carb, led to insulin resistance and an increase in fasting insulin, but the ketogenic diet did not. So if you just read the abstract, the first part is what you get, but not what actually occurred. So this is one of the studies I'm talking about. So they said that the increase in insulin resistance and fasting insulin was over a 3-day feeding, a short 3-day feeding. That's not long enough to change how your body fuels itself. And again, this is with mice. It takes longer than 3 days to get into ketosis, okay? But what they were doing in the study was they were doing high carb and high fat together. Well, that's a recipe for disaster. That will jack your triglycerides to the ceiling. So that's why you don't want to do that. So so in the study itself, even though in the abstract they said that that the ketogenic diet, high fat diet could cause type 2 diabetes, they left out the part about it being high carb as well. So, and then also you have to follow what this group stands for. The Physiological Society, the group of European scientists, they are into environmental climate stuff, which means they're into globalism and veganism to save the planet. So they don't want you to eat meat. They don't want you to eat animal products at all. So therefore, you got to follow the money. What does it stand? What do they stand for? So Virta Health, which is a group of physicians out in San Diego that reverses type 2 diabetes on a daily basis with diet. And they have an actual study here that's on actual humans and with diabetes and obesity. And the opposite of this Medical Express article is true. Ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting will make you less insulin resistant and more insulin sensitive. So let's take a look at that real quick. Oops, where'd it go? Okay. So here's there, just looking at this chart, looking at the improvement over 1 year. So this is the mean percentage of improvement. So in H1, your A1C, 20% improvement over 1 year. Usual, it's got worse. Glucose, like 22% better. Serum insulin, almost 40% better. Your homo IR, 45%. Diabetes medication, non-metformin, much better. So as you can tell, all the diabetic markers got better after 1 year on a ketogenic diet. Here's the obesity. Mean improvement after 1 year. Percentage of improvement is like 15%. It's plus 12%. There we go. That's it. Yeah. So excess weight represents risk for both type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. Verta patients sustained loss of 12% of their body weight over 1 year. The prevalence of class 3 obesity among participants was reduced from 46% to 20%. That's awesome. Okay? So that this study goes on and on. I just want to show you that this is on real humans, and this is real clinical data from their clinic. Okay? So it's not made up stuff. This is from real people. And here are more articles that I have. Let's see. I think these two are, this is a controlled study in 2005 that proved keto helps with type 2 diabetes. This one right here, I don't know if y'all can see that, but this one right here is a study conducted by Jason Fung on intermittent fasting and ketosis. And then this is from the American Diabetes Association. They finally had to admit, I think this is what this is, hang on. Oops, come here. Well, I thought I had a link to it, but I don't. Anyway, what this says is they finally said that the ketogenic diet was a possible treatment for type 2 diabetes. They finally had to admit that that was actually true. And then I think I have some more on the next page. Oh, it's this one right here. Let's see, did I put that one? Well, this is not working like I thought it would. I am sorry, guys. But you can see these are links, so you can go and look at them. You can copy and paste them in and look at the review. So I call this myth busted. You are out of there. Myth number 2, keto is bad for heart health. Is it really? Sure about that? So here's the myth. First of all, it was just, this one's working. There we go. This is from Pop Sugar under the fitness column. Now, Pop Sugar is barely above the National Enquirer in relevance. I mean, they interviewed 2 cardiologists, one that said high fat is bad no matter what, and the other one said that saturated fat from animal sources is bad. Also, the second cardiologist said that sugar is more, did say that sugar is more harmful to your heart than fat or protein. But then she also said that extreme restrictions of one or more food groups are hard to stick to and do not result in lasting weight loss. Really? Okay, yeah. I'm obviously, she has never seen me. So, and then she says at the very tail end, overall, there are 7 major risk factors for heart disease: sedentary lifestyle, high cholesterol, high glucose, obesity, diet, smoking, and high blood pressure. And then she says, losing weight with a ketogenic diet can improve at least 5 of them and reduce one's risk of a heart attack by at least 50%. I'm sold. So she goes through the whole article saying how the ketogenic diet is going to kill you. And then she says, but it can help you lose weight and get rid of 5 of the 7 risk factors. So which is it? So you see, they have this big headline that says keto is going to kill you. And then at the end of the article, they sneak in there and say, but not really. So I'll show you that. Yeah, so here it is. And you can go down to the end. And here's the final verdict where she talks about this. You know, so she says, losing weight with a ketogenic diet can improve at least 5 of them, reduce one's risk of a heart attack by at least 50%. Then why did you say this at the beginning? you know, it's bad for your heart. You know, talking about saturated fat is the evil one. We already talked about that last week about how actually canola oil is actually the evil one, not the saturated fat. All right, so let's go back. Now, here's some truth about here's some truth for you. This is another study from Verta Health, I think, that came from Verta Health, but it's let's see, open a hyperlink. Yes, open a hyperlink, please. Okay, so this is cardiovascular diabetology. That's a big old fat word. This was a non-randomized, meaning they picked the subjects, but it was a controlled study. So they were controlling the diet. But anyway, the conclusions were that patient care treatment, including nutritional ketosis in patients with type 2 diabetes, improved most biomarkers of cardiovascular disease risk after 1 year. The increase in LDL cholesterol appeared to be limited to large LDL subfraction, and I will tell you what that means. With the LDL particle size increased, but total LDL-P and ApoB were unchanged, and inflammation and blood pressure decreased. Okay, so a lot of times on the ketogenic diet, the LDL will rise, but it's the size of the particle that matters, not the number. And a lot of doctors don't get that. And what you're really concerned with is ApoB and LDL-P. If you have a thyroid issue, and you are hypothyroid and don't know it, your LDL can go through the ceiling. Mine did, and as soon as we got that back under control, my LDL went right down to normal, as it should have been. But I was raging hypothyroid and didn't know it. So there are underlying conditions that can cause your LDL to rise that have nothing to do with keto. So anyway, obviously this is a study that busts that myth. And then there are other studies. I gave you other studies. And then there's another guy, his name is Dave Feldman. He owns the cholesterolcode.com. He is what we call an N=1 trial guy. And what does that mean? It says an N of 1 is a clinical trial in which a single patient is the entire trial, a single case study. You can have an N=1 test on yourself, which is basically what the ketogenic lifestyle is all about. It's about improving your life with your particular biomarkers for your particular bio-individuality. So he is an N=1 trial study. But here's the thing. Some people are what we call lean mass hyper-responders, which is what also happened to me as I lost so much weight and I exercised a lot. I became what we call a lean mass hyper-responder, where I have very little body fat. So it has nowhere to go. So in that weight loss, when I was to active, what we call active weight loss, my LDL was circulating through my body so much to give me enough energy to get through my workouts. And so it appeared that I had really high LDL, but it was actually not true. Plus I had a thyroid issue that was also going on with it and made it look much worse than it actually was. And so now that's not an issue, but there are lean mass hyper-responders who are in perfect health with a high LDL, and there's nothing wrong with them. So there's another clinical trial study from Dr. Eric Westman, who I've relayed to y'all a lot. Dr. Westman is the obesity and diabetes clinical head of the department at Duke University. There's not a bigger expert on keto and obesity and diabetes than Dr. Westman. There just doesn't exist. He is the man. And the Pure study is done by a guy named Salim Youssef, and it shows a steep increase in cardiovascular risk as carbohydrate intake increased beyond 55% of total energy. So when you go above 55%, that presents a cardiovascular risk. And they actually found in that study that increasing your fats was protective for your heart. Low consumption of total fat was also associated with increased risk. There are other low-carb cardiologists worth listening to: Brett Scher, Nadir Ali, Asim Malhotra, and then there's another cardiovascular expert out there he's actually a chemical engineer, but because of his chemistry background, he's gotten really interested in the lipidemiology type stuff, and his name is Ivor Cummings, and he's fun to listen to because he's actually from Ireland, and I just love his voice. So if you enjoy listening to an Irish accent, who knows a lot of stuff, Ivor Cummings is your man. And he also he has a podcast, and he interviews a lot of different cardiologists and people in this lipidemiology world, and to give the latest research. But these are a lot of studies to back up what I've just been talking about. And now I've lost my spot. There we go. So I call this myth busted. Next one. Myth number 3, keto can cause or worsen gallbladder issues. Well, Kim Calhoun, who 3 years ago went on the ketogenic diet plan, has no gallbladder. Hasn't had a gallbladder since 2003. I had horrible gallstones, worst pain I ever had in my life. I have done the ketogenic diet every day for 3 years with no gallbladder. You can do it. So here's an article that says it's bad. And what does it say? This one is another follow the money one. Okay, Dr. Eden, yeah. So anyway, this is what she says, okay? She talks about, hang on one second, let me get my notes here. She talks about the strict elimination of carbs and that being a bad thing. But in actuality, you have essential fats, you have essential amino acids, which are your proteins. There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. You never have to consume a carbohydrate to function, ever. So already, that's not a good thing. On a well-formulated ketogenic diet, you still have carbs. You don't totally eliminate them. So already that's a lie. You don't have to eliminate carbs. You restrict carbs, but it's not an elimination of carbs. And she also claims that rapid weight loss promotes gallstone formation. That is a crock. I have never seen that happen in anybody that I know of. It's caused by eating fats mixed with carbs. It is actually what it is, because it's triglycerides that form cholesterol balls in your gallbladder. She also does not cite any study whatsoever or any medical article that proves this. And here's the follow the money. She sells a product that supposedly dissolves gallstones. Yeah, they're cholesterol balls. You're not going to dissolve them. And so already you see what happens. So she's got this article already written about how horrible it is, and here's my solution, this bottle of pills. So the truth, I go to Dr. Ken Berry, and here's a study that the studies in his YouTube videos that he cites. You can go to what he says, and then he has his studies that he got from wherever, which is usually from PubMed, talking about high fat is not the cause of gallstone formation or sluggish bowel, but high carb, yo-yo dieting, extreme calorie restriction. And so there are several YouTube videos I'm giving you there. Also, there's an article by Dr. Brett Scher. He's on the board. He's the cardiologist I just referred to. He's on the board of Diet Doctor, which is another keto site. And he also has a podcast. He's a good guy to listen to. Let me open this real quick. But this kind of gives you, talks about gallstones and low carb, and about the conventional fat-phobic answer, and how gallstones are actually gotten it in studies of extreme low-fat diets. So he's got studies. And so this is just an article to take you through why gallstones and gallbladder issues are not a problem on the ketogenic diet. Okay, and then there are some people who are more sensitive to fats than others. And some people, I have had a couple of people who in the beginning, not long term, but in the beginning had trouble with fats, but they had trouble with fats and either didn't have a gallbladder or had gallstones, but most of the time it was a lack of a gallbladder. And they had trouble with fats even before they started keto. So any amount of fat would make them kind of sick. And so here are some options for how to deal with that if that becomes an issue. But for most people, it is really not an issue, and it's not going to cause gallstones. You're not going to call bile sludge or slow moving bile or any of that stuff. That's just a big fat nothing. And so this gives you some ideas of how to incorporate some special carbs and soluble fibers to help with fat absorption until your body gets used to running on that fat is basically what it is. But there are people, like I said, I have no gallbladder. I do just fine. Okay. And here are even more studies talking about, you know, how high fat mixes with your gallbladder, what the different ones. And then here's low calorie causes and more of those calorie restriction causes. And then other high carb diets, what causes those. So these are just a bunch of different studies that talk about gallbladder issues related to diet. And here's even more. I got lots of studies on this one. So obviously with this many studies that say that the gallbladder is not an issue and with the ketogenic diet, I call this myth busted. Next one, ketogenic diet is not good for kidneys. No, really, I love Morgan Freeman, by the way. Scroll, I don't know if you know this, but he's from Tutwiler, Mississippi. He's a Mississippi boy. Oh, and now I'm back on my page. Yay. Now bear with me just 1 second. All right. So here's the article. This one's from Harvard. I love that Harvard puts this out, and yet not one medical study. You got the Harvard Medical School right there. Not one medical study is even cited, not one. And see, what really destroys your kidneys is carbohydrates from sugars, grains, and processed foods. And the studies that Dr. Berry will show here show that all protein and fat have no bearing on the worsening of kidney disease, or that high protein causes kidney disease. So let's look at this Harvard study for just a minute, because I just love the idea that Harvard put this out and they have no medical citation at all. So here it is. It shows how it works, but they tend to, whoops, excuse me, go away. It says it aims to force your body into using a different type of fuel. Yes, because and it talks about it being tricky. It's like, it's not tricky. It's they make it sound like a horrible thing, but I promise you, it's not. And then they have all these risks, which I'm going to do every single one of these risks. Fuzzy thinking, it actually does the exact opposite. Constipation, exactly does the exact opposite. It regulates you. Kidney problems, we're going to talk about. Yes, this is it. It has nothing to do with that. Liver problems, we're going to talk about liver in just a minute. And nutritional deficiency. If you're eating nose to tail meat, you're going to get all the same you're going to get all the same minerals that you would as including selenium, magnesium, phosphorus, and the B vitamins. In fact, you're going to get more B vitamins if you ate beef liver than if you ate bread or the things that have B vitamins in them. They just don't have the same, and they're more bioavailable to human beings. So this article, it's full of hooey, just so you know. And here are I'll just show you one of Dr. Berry's videos. I won't play it, but I'll show it to you. Ooh, Dr. Berry's very big. There we go.
Georgia has 186 hospitals serving 10 million. Also has radical healthcare.
So it says, protect your kidneys with this diet. Whole grains are out? Yes. So anyway, it talks about the misinformation and how whole grains are going to help you with, which is actually not true at all with kidney disease. My husband has stage 3 kidney disease, and I promise you, we are not eating bread. I've tried to limit his bread anyway. Here are more studies that prove that keto does not hurt your kidneys. And here's an article by Diet Doctor. I like Diet Doctor simply because they speak in plain English, and it's a little easier reading than some of the studies are, and it gives you the same kind of information, but it describes what your kidneys do, how kidneys are damaged, you know, and then it talks about the low carb diets in those with healthy kidneys, and then protein with functioning kidneys, and then protein on a low carb or keto diet, and then talking about low carb and the risk of kidney stones. You know, so it goes into all of that. Low carb diets and established kidney disease. And then so they go through the whole thing in plain English to let you know exactly what you're getting into, which is why I like the Diet Doctor articles. And I think this was also written by Brett Scher, if I'm not mistaken. Let's go back and put it up here just for a second. No, Keith Brennan, another guy. Oh, Medical Review by Dr. Brett Shear. Who's this guy? Ah, it's written by a nephrologist. So it's written by a kidney doctor. So there you go. Okay, so I love that article. So again, here's another myth that is busted. Next one. Keto isn't good for my thyroid. Okay, so here's the offending article. I love these offending articles. They offend me. Okay, so she has this written by an OBGYN, actually. I think that's what she, yeah, they're in this OBGYN. So here she talks about it. So she talks about the too little insulin can impact liver's ability to make T3 out of T4. That is absolutely not true. In fact, the liver has very little to do with T4 making T3. It is the removal of one iodine molecule from T4 so that it becomes T3. This is not done by the liver. So then it says it creates acidity, making it very inflammatory. The ketogenic diet is anti-inflammatory. There's nothing inflammatory about the ketogenic diet. So that's a bunch of hooey. Then she talks about the keto flu being being caused by that. I can't remember how exactly I wrote down what she said because it killed me. She says that keto flu is a result of the downregulation of the thyroid and not the lack of electrolytes. Keto flu is caused by lack of electrolytes more than anything else. It's not the downregulation of the thyroid. Now, as you lose weight, your thyroid will naturally downregulate because it doesn't need to make as much because there's not as much of you. So there will be a downregulation, but it's a good thing, not a bad thing. And the ketogenic diet, as I said, is very anti-inflammatory due to the nature of the lack of the inflammatory foods, which are your processed foods, your high-level carbs. She even goes on to say that the more likely, more likely culprits of inflammation are. She, and I quote, "I have found that women in particular do better on a diet that excludes the top inflammatory foods such as gluten, dairy, sugar, and processed foods." Now, well, duh, almost all of those, you can have dairy on the ketogenic diet, but some people that do find that inflammatory, but the rest of those are not on the ketogenic diet as it is. So, 3 out of 4 of them are keto. And then she goes on to say that ketogenic green, which is mostly meat and green vegetables, which is what I tout all day long as part of a well-formulated ketogenic lifestyle, meat, green vegetables. But all those caveats are at the end of the article after she already eviscerates the ketogenic diet for causing thyroid problems. So again, this is the same article where they start out saying this horrible thing is going to be caused by this. And then in the end, they just say, but not really, but not really. So this article here by Berta Health is a really good one. It helps explain thyroid and ketogenic diet. And does your thyroid need dietary carbohydrates? And so this is a great article to read about that particular thing and some things that they found about it. So I'm not going to read it to you, obviously, but it is a great article that talks about the need for having carbohydrates and does it affect your thyroid? And in that sense, is keto going to harm it? And then Dr. Berry's videos about thyroid function. Why did I put his on this particular one? Well, first of all, his wife, Nisha, has Hashimoto's thyroiditis. She's had it for a long time. It caused a lot of infertility with them. They went through all sorts of things. She's actually gone carnivore for the most part to try to, because her Hashimoto's is so rampant, and has done very well. And they ended up getting pregnant and they had a son and he's adorable. And so they worked through those issues, but this is near and dear to his heart because his wife has trouble with thyroid. And obviously he wouldn't put her on a ketogenic diet or ketogenic on steroids, which is carnivore, unless he truly thought that his wife was going to do better by doing it, which she did. They wanted the child. They went through this process with nutrition. She had a baby. And then Dr. Westman, this is an article, a YouTube video about his clinical experience with patients with thyroid disease or not having thyroid disease. And this particular article, video is very good for those who to show what tests you need. And Dr. Berry also goes into that, but what tests you actually need to have run for a thyroid panel, what an actual full thyroid panel is. And unfortunately, in our Western medicine world, they're very hard to find a doctor who will actually run these for you. There are ways to get them run on your own. I do have private labs that will run these tests for you if your doctor will not. So anyway, so that's the Dr. Berry videos. One of them is 7 things about the thyroid you didn't know, 5 things about Hashimoto's, and then there's an interview with the grass-fed girl, Caitlin Weeks, about keto, carnivore, and hormones, and about thyroid downregulation and things like that. And also his book, which I've read from cover to cover and have it all marked up, is called Lies My Doctor Told Me. And what it goes into, it's got a huge thyroid chapter, but what the book is about all these things that these doctors were told in medical school or heard from somebody else, and they use it in their practice, but it's actually got no medical citation, study citation in it at all. It's just some old wives' tale that's been passed down, and it's not true at all. So this book is very helpful. It has many medical studies to back it up. And it's called Lies My Doctor Told Me by Dr. Ken Berry, and I recommend that book highly as well. So I call this myth busted. Number 6, myth number 6. Keto causes or worsens fatty liver disease. What is fatty liver disease? It's non-alcoholic cirrhosis is what it is, basically. And so here's our offending article. Yes. Oops. Go away. I just want to show you these sites. No, I don't want to learn more. Not from you. Bye. Why won't you let me go? Oh, there we go. Okay. Keto diet could damage liver health, says experts. Now, it doesn't really say in this article who the experts are, except for, this one doctor here, registered nutritionist, which is not an MD, it's a nutritionist, but they teach nutritionists bad things in school, so they really don't have, and this doctor actually says, a liver disease specialist says that eating lots of fats and restricting carbohydrates can actually lead to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is totally ridiculous. Because here's this next sentence: but you're basically consuming 80% of your caloric intake from fat, which is not true. It's 70% or less. It certainly makes sense why in rodents we're seeing that it causes this. Again, in rodents, this is not humans, not humans. Okay. So then this is Dr. Berry there's a new study out, and this is a brand new video he just put out with links to new studies. So I wanted to put that out. So, and he had a huge misunderstanding about how dietary fat is even treated by the liver. So we are not rats. And once you watch any of these videos and articles that I've put up here, you will see that the overwhelming evidence is that it actually reverses fatty liver disease, not causes it. So this myth is busted. And our last one, myth number 7, keto is not sustainable. A lot of people will think that, especially when you first start. But in this article, there's another Harvard article. They spew their opinion, but it's not backed up by any medical study or fact. And they quote in here, it's hard to follow, it's hard to stick to, that people can't eat this way for a long time. That's just what he said. And then the study, pardon me. Back to study. It says, it doesn't limit calories, so to speak. It says, and this is another misnomer. It says people can eat as much as they like as long as they restrict carbs. That's actually not true either. This means that people don't have to endure long periods of feeling hungry. And that's why the ketogenic diet tends to be sustainable, is because the hunger doesn't come because of the the spikes in blood sugar that go up and down that we've talked about before. In the survey in the Journal of Insulin Resistance found that before respondents started their low carb diets, nearly 9 out of 10 experienced intense hunger pain between meals. Once on the diet, 3.5% said they grew hungry between meals. So it went down considerably. So because it was 9 out of 10, that's 90% at the beginning. It went from 90% to 3.5. So of the 1,500 or so surveys participants, over half reported staying on a low carb diet at least 1 year, and 34% reported more than 2 years. Further, those on the diet for 2 years or more said they largely maintained their weight loss. And so this is a self-selected sample, and of course, people who are, it's got an obvious bias though with people who are experiencing the success. Dieters that are less inclined to report on their failure. But it does show, interestingly enough, that the long-term adherence is possible. Okay. Oops, I'm still missing my thing. Hang on. Yes, it's busted. Let me tell you why. I'm getting to my thing. Sorry, guys. I have more to say. So here's my deal. I personally know people, friends of mine, people that I associate with in the keto world, who have done the ketogenic lifestyle for over 20 years. Dr. Eric Messman being one of them. Nina Teicholz, where I get most of my information, the one who wrote The Big Fat Surprise, has been eating low carb for 25 years, as long as I have been married. That's 1995, before it was even a thing. My friend Jess Dudley of Find Your Food has been keto and low carb over 6. Christy Sullivan, who is another, she's a cookbook writer in the keto world, who I also know, just celebrated her eight-year anniversary, or keto-versary, as we call them. I've done this for almost 3 years. In January 10th, I will have maintained 130-pound weight loss for 2 years. I have never done that in my entire life. I've never been able to maintain a weight loss, period. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm not looking to quit anytime soon. The reason it's sustainable is because the hunger goes away. Once you get past the inertia of starting, and once you get past the craving for those carbs, you stop being hungry. You start focusing on other things. I promise you that's the way it is. I was a carbaholic. I was addicted to sugar. No more. Was it hard in the beginning? Yes. Does it get easier every day? Yes. You can do this. You can maintain it. You just have to say, this is the way I'm going to eat now. So this myth is busted.